Not for the first time, vandals have attacked the Bomber Command War Memorial. Sometime in the early hours of this morning, the monument remembering the sacrifice of 50,000 airmen was hit with paint. Nearby, a statue of Churchill and President Roosevelt was also defaced. CCTV footage has now been passed to the police. Who and why would someone do such a thing? Our correspondent Simon Harris has the story.
Perhaps it was someone's idea of a joke. More likely it was some sort of protest. Whatever the reason, this was the result. A memorial to more than 50,000 dead airmen defaced with white paint. The £6 million monument at Hyde Park Corner was attacked in the early hours. Linda White from Catford helped raise money to build the memorial. Her father was a rear gunner who was captured by the Germans.
This was the People's Memorial. It took a lot of work to get this independent, and years, decades after the end of the war, they finally were recognised. And to see it just vandalised is really heartbreaking.
Less than a mile away, two bronze statues of wartime leaders were given the same treatment. US President Franklin Roosevelt and the Prime Minister Winston Churchill have sat here in New Bond Street for almost 25 years.
I see it every day, and I see many people sit by it and take lots of pictures, but no, I've never seen it being vandalised, and it's quite a horrible thing to see. It's not very nice.
Once so used to it, and those sort of people. I can't believe what is happening to us. I really can't.
In recent years, the sculpture, called Allies, has appeared in many a tourist selfie.
We were working here last week, and it were pristine. We even have a photo taken with it, as you do when you're in London. And then we pulled up this morning, and I was just in total disgust when I saw it. And I thought, is that meant to be like that? Is it a joke or what? And I thought, it can't be.
The RAF's bombing campaign against German towns and cities helped end the war, but many civilians were killed, and in the post-war decades, the tactics of Bomber Command were questioned. It wasn't until 2012 that a memorial was unveiled to the bomber crews who died. It's not the first time it's been attacked, but with no obvious slogans left by the vandals, it's unclear what, if anything, was meant by this. Simon Harris, ITV News, Green Park.
In the middle of the big Brexit vote last week was the story of the London MP so keen to have her say on the country's future, she postponed the birth of her baby. Tulip Sadiq eventually had her caesarean section on Thursday. Today, the government announced moves to introduce proxy votes, so the likes of Tulip and actually any new parent won't miss out on key parliamentary decisions. Our political correspondent Simon Harris went to meet Tulip and her newborn at their home.
He's 5 days old, but already has a place in parliamentary history. Raphael's mum is the Labour MP Tulip Sadiq, who postponed her caesarean to take part in last week's Brexit vote.
I'm frustrated. I feel like I was put in a position where I had to choose between being a mother and being healthy and looking after the fate of my unborn child, and then doing my job. I take pride in the job that I do. I worked really hard to become an MP.
It meant leaving her home in North London and appearing in the Commons in a wheelchair. Miss Sadiq said she didn't trust the traditional pairing system, which allows MPs from opposing parties to mutually agree to miss a vote.
The fact that I had high blood pressure, there were so many things wrong with it. It was a complicated pregnancy, it was high risk. And then, trying to represent Hampstead and Kilburn, it's not a choice I should really have to make.
Until now, Parliament has refused to adopt a process which allows one MP to nominate another to register a proxy vote. But today, all that changed with the announcement of a 12-month trial.
This is a step forward, removing the choice between parliamentary and parental responsibilities and helping to make Parliament a more modern workplace. I do hope that the House will be of the same opinion and that it will fully support the motion next week to bring forward a pilot scheme for proxy voting.
It's groundbreaking, actually, but if you think about it, it's actually quite a simple thing that should have been brought in a long time ago, and it wasn't. But if it happens now in 2019, I'm very proud that I've played a part in it, and I guess my son has as well.
The most important question, how is Raphael?
He's already been accused of being a mummy's boy, which I find a bit hard to believe because he's 5 days old. But generally, he came out crying and protesting, so it looked like he was quite healthy. He has given me sleepless nights, but that's part of the course, I think, if you're a new mother. But other than that, we're very happy with him.
Raphael, of course, hasn't a clue about all the fuss. His mum is wondering about a T-shirt for him with the slogan, "This is what a feminist looks like." Simon Harris, ITV News, Hampstead.
An investigation is underway tonight into how a 26-year-old woman was killed after being hit by a police car responding to a 999 call. It happened late last night in Walthamstow. It's believed she was a refugee from Eritrea who was staying at a nearby hostel. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Engineers were checking a pedestrian crossing today, just metres from where a young woman in her 20s died after being knocked over by a police car. It's not clear if she was using the crossing or in the road just before it. Forest Road in Walthamstow has a 20-mile-an-hour limit, but the police were on a 999 call. Gilbert James was in his flat when he heard a loud bang and came outside.
It was terrible. There was no chance at all, because she just got flung from at least 12 metres away from the police car. It's just bad.
The young woman, who was thought to be a refugee from Ethiopia or Eritrea, lived in this YMCA hostel for young homeless people. It's just a few metres away. She was almost home. One of her friends got a call early this morning.
Some people, they know that I know her, so they just give me a call. They told me there is an accident. Can you please pop in? And I came in 4 o'clock. Since 4 o'clock I'm here, and we are waiting for the investigation.
The police officers in the car were on their way to reports of a man threatening members of the public. When anyone dials 999, they usually expect and want the emergency services to arrive as quickly as possible. But tragedies like this raise inevitable questions. Andre Clovis is a solicitor who represents the relatives of people killed in car crashes involving the police.
The question I always ask myself is this necessary? What is it they're going to, and does it require them to drive quite as quickly as they are, taking the risks that they do? And we see that all around London. There are so many road users. Inevitably, these things are going to happen. And we know statistically that the number of collisions that police forces are involved in, particularly the Met, is on the rise.
Tonight, Scotland Yard said the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, had been told about the crash. Simon Harris, ITV News, Walthamstow.
Well, Jack Shepard claimed last night he went on the run because he feared for his safety in prison here in Britain. Charlotte's father, Graham, is a civil servant, and Shepard said he may influence the treatment he gets in jail, something Graham described as ludicrous when he spoke to Simon Harris today.
For Charlotte's dad and sister, the last 24 hours have been an emotional rollercoaster. Relief that Shepard is no longer a fugitive. Despair at his swaggering appearance before the cameras.
He's motivated by self-interest, clearly. I don't think he's got the slightest remorse or empathy with our family.
It's unbelievable how the man can carry on with claiming innocence, and his whole demeanour, he's in complete denial of his actions.
It just backs up my opinion that this man acted in a crass, reckless, irresponsible, immature manner, and everything we saw from Jack Shepard yesterday backs that up.
In one TV interview in Tbilisi, Shepard claimed he went on the run because Charlotte's father, a civil servant at the Ministry of Justice, had told him he would have a very bad time in prison.
I said, "I'm so sorry, Graham," but he did not want to hear it. He just hung up. So I feel at risk from him and his power within the prison system.
Did he ring you?
No, I've never spoken to Jack Shepard. How on earth would he rang me? It couldn't be further from the truth. To come to the conclusion that just because I worked for the prison service it would affect his stay in prison is ridiculous and ludicrous, because I certainly haven't got any measure of influence like that.
Jack Shepard disappeared in March, just before the start of his manslaughter trial. In July, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. An international arrest warrant was issued. Then in December, the Court of Appeal gave him permission to challenge his conviction, even though he was on the run. But yesterday, Shepard finally handed himself in to Georgian police.
I hope that he does not put obstacles in the way, that he doesn't show disdain for justice in the way that he has done over so many, many months, because the family have suffered so grievously as a consequence of his wanton and irresponsible actions.
Losing Charlotte is just so heartbreaking and left such an empty void. I've got really no feelings for Shepard whatsoever.
And we want him back here serving his sentence. We would hope that he wouldn't fight it. We would hope that he would have a bit more dignity and accept his conviction.
Charlotte's family say it is only when Shepard is in jail in Britain will they be able to start living normal lives. Simon Harris, ITV News.